Yeah, yeah. Fall so hard, you better believe me, it's scary. It's basketball at the bar with Calvin and Barry. So put a tip in the jar, cause these dudes can really fill it up. Whether it's buckets you need or just a beer in a cup. We're here for fresh conversations and some delicious libations. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. My boys got you covered like you being guarded by Peyton. From the glove to the clock and every...
What's up, Barflies? Welcome to Basketball at the Bar. Join us live every weekday for the best NBA podcast here on YouTube, where the takes are hot and the drinks are cold. There's no dress code, and you can take us wherever you go. So pull up a stool, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe. This is Basketball at the Bar. Grab your drinks and let's go, Calvin. Happy Thursday, everyone. It is April 21st and episode 9 here. Uh-oh. There we go. It is episode 9 here at Basketball at the Bar. We are almost wrapping up week number 2 of playoff action, or play-in and playoff action. We're almost wrapping up week 1 of the official playoffs. We have a very interesting show for you all today. We talk about some injury updates to Devin Booker, Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis. We talk about Ben Simmons' potential return. Game 4, Chet Holmgren declaring for the NBA draft. And then we break down 3 games yesterday: the Nets, Celtics, Sixers, Raptors, and Bulls, Bucks. And then we give previews on all 3 games today: Grizzlies, Timberwolves, Mavericks, Jazz, and Warriors, Nuggets. And we end the show, as always, with Q&A. You, the fans, we'd love to answer all your questions, so please stick around. Make sure you write down all your questions, and we'll be available for you all at the end. What's up, Jug29? Glad you are able to finally join us live. Welcome, welcome. All right, Calvin, how's your Thursday so far?
It's great.
Yeah?
Yeah, great day of basketball yesterday.
Yeah? I know you're rocking the
I'm
Bulls
off
jersey
today. That's right. In DeMar we trust.
All right, let's talk about the first subject on today's show, and that is Devin Booker. We have an update on the Devin Booker injury situation. Apparently, he has a grade 1 hamstring strain, could miss 2 to 3 weeks of action, which potentially puts him out for this entire first-round series, Calvin. Are the Suns in trouble without Devin Booker?
I mean, the short answer is yes, they're in trouble without him. The question is, how much trouble are they actually in? I mean, if the Pelicans continue to play the way they have played, this could become a pretty evenly matched series. But, you know, it's still, again, we were saying Phoenix is still the Phoenix Suns. They still are the Phoenix Suns. So is this going to hurt them? Yeah, I mean, you'd be crazy to say that it wouldn't hurt them. But are the Phoenix Suns capable of winning this series without Devin Booker? I think the answer to that question is also yes.
Yeah, if I was the Phoenix Suns, I'd be a little concerned, and that's because we lost game 2. We lost home court advantage. Now we're heading out, and, Devin Booker is a big part of what this team does. So I would be a little concerned if I'm Brooklyn, but this next game 3 is going to be huge.
Oh, yeah. I mean, game 3 in a tied series, we've got a few of these now. They're always incredibly, incredibly important. So, yeah, whoever wins this next game is going to have a huge upper hand, whether Devin Booker comes back or not.
Yeah, as most of you already know, the Phoenix Suns lost on Tuesday at home to the New Orleans Pelicans, 125-114. Devin Booker had 31 points basically at halftime in this game before coming out with that hamstring injury. He has been incredible. He keeps getting better, but I think it's going to be a huge loss without him. We talked about injury concerns for the Phoenix Suns earlier, and it was all surrounding Chris Paul, nothing about Devin Booker, but he does have hamstring injury issues in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if he is able to come out of this thing 100% or somewhere close to it.
Yeah, the most difficult part about a hamstring injury is the fact that it can linger for a long, long time. It really, really hinders your mobility, obviously, and your progression back to the basketball court.
Yep.
I mean, you can look like you're pretty healthy or feel like you're pretty healthy walking around one day, and then you try to run, cut, jump stop, all that stuff, and it immediately re-aggravates it. So James Harden, Chris Paul, they know this deal really, really well. Hopefully for Devin Booker, he's able to get back on the court sooner than later, and I'm sure he's talking to Chris Paul nonstop about how to rehab this injury, because Chris Paul definitely knows how to rehab a hurt hamstring. But it could, like you said, it's 2 to 3 weeks. Grade 1 is the lightest grade, but it's just like a sprained ankle. You know, those injuries can stick with you for months.
Yeah, and what does this mean for the rest of his leg or his other leg, right? Because we know when people have injuries, they favor a certain area. It puts more pressure on other tendons. We saw that happen with Kevin Durant just a few seasons ago in Golden State. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. Hopefully the Phoenix Suns can stay alive here in the first round and be ready when Booker does come back. All right, next up, Chris Middleton. We saw him go down in the game yesterday. It doesn't have a cause here. It just has him listed as day-to-day. Calvin, I want to hear your thoughts on this Chris Middleton injury.
The initial reports are that it's a sprained MCL.
Okay.
In his left knee, I believe it is.
Okay. Day-to-day is not bad. Definitely much better than out 2 to 4 weeks.
Yes.
This could be updated later. But I want to hear your thoughts on Chris Middleton, what he means to this team, and whether this is a big deal or not.
Oh, it's a really big deal. It's a really, really big deal. In fact, Chicago's back in this series now, and that's in large part because Chris Middleton wasn't Chris Middleton when he was on the court healthy already. That he has really struggled to regain that all-star form that we are used to seeing from him now all of last season and through the finals. He had a tough first half, lots of turnovers in this game too. Really did not look like himself at all. He came back much more aggressive in the second half, hit a bunch of threes, and then he goes down with this injury. So this is a very big deal for Milwaukee because they need all of the big three on the court if they're going to advance deep into this postseason.
Yeah, I agree. And just like the last injury, the thing that's so troubling about this injury to me is the fact that the Bucks lost the game.
Yep.
At home. This is a very talented Chicago team. I'm still predicting them to get eliminated here in the first round. I feel like they're a little young, but this definitely helps their chances, and they've been playing incredible. And your guy, Frozen DeRozan, has been ice cold.
He sure has.
In a good way.
We'll talk about that game later. It was a huge game from the Chicago Bulls, both on offense and defense. They played Milwaukee about as good as you can play them. So the Bucks are definitely going to be worried about this injury if it keeps Middleton out of any games.
Yeah, speaking of the Bucks, we also saw Bobby Portis go out in that game after getting hit by the eye and being bloodied. He is also day-to-day. What does this Bobby Portis injury mean to Milwaukee?
It means a lot as well. Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez missed 65 games this season due to back surgery. Bobby Portis was their starter for most of the season in his replacement, and he had probably the best year of his career. Averaged over 15 points a game. He's become a really, really good three-point shooter, which is exactly how the Bucks play all of their big men, right? They're floor spacers that look to get shots up from three and keep the lane open for Giannis to penetrate inside. So this one isn't maybe as tough of a blow for them, because Brook Lopez is back and just had a great game last night. And also, you forget, the Bucks now have Serge Ibaka as well. So he's just another guy that they're going to throw in to eat up some of those minutes. So the Middleton injury is obviously a much bigger deal, but Bobby Portis has been a huge part of this team all year long, so it can't go understated that they will miss him as well.
Yeah, I think the Serge Ibaka addition will greatly help them weather the storm of this injury. But, back on Chris Middleton, they're also missing Dante DiVincenzo and trading him to Sacramento earlier in the season. DiVincenzo can do a lot of the things. He's not anywhere close to a player of Chris Middleton's status, but he can do a lot of the same things. Who is going to be that guy that steps up at the 2 or 3 position for them is going to be huge.
It's Grayson Allen now. Grayson Allen has assumed the role that Dante DiVincenzo filled while he was with that team. So they're going to need him to play big.
Yeah, and hopefully he can fill that role. Next up on the schedule here, Ben Simmons. Some huge Ben Simmons news coming out today. We've been hearing rumors about him getting closer and closer to returning to the court. Now we are hearing he is targeting Game 4. The timing is a little weird. We saw, the Nets lose yesterday. Now they lost 2 games in Boston. The first one was a very close game. They lost at the buzzer. The second one was not so close, where they basically led the whole game and fell apart in the fourth quarter. It's weird that they would announce that he's going to be available for Game 4 now when we still have Game 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, the initial reports we heard was he was always targeting Games 4, 5, and 6 as the return. So this is good news, right? Because it's the earliest of all of those dates.
What does this mean for the Brooklyn Nets? What can Ben Simmons bring to Brooklyn? And could this potentially change the series?
Well, it could definitely potentially change the series. I mean, it could change the series in both directions for Brooklyn, right? It could be good or it could be bad. But what is Ben Simmons going to bring to this team? Exactly what you would expect from Ben Simmons. A long, lengthy defender, another guy who can handle the ball. This team, Kyrie Irving is a point guard, but at times they use him kind of like a shooting guard. So this just gives an added dimension to their offense. He's a great player to move without the ball, timely cuts, offensive rebounds, things like that. Those are actually exactly the types of plays that Brooklyn needs. This is a really grit and grind series. It's all physical, loose balls, turnovers, things like that are that much more magnified in this series. And that is an area that Ben Simmons can definitely help them in.
Yeah, the one category for me that Ben Simmons really needs to help Brooklyn out with is defense, right? Like their defense has been struggling all season long. It's going to be a breath of fresh air for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to say, okay, Ben, go lock down Jason Tatum.
Definitely.
Get the ball out of Jason Tatum's hand. We don't want him doing anything.
Still a very tall order for Ben Simmons, a guy who hasn't played in almost a year.
It is.
Hasn't even really practiced with this team probably up until maybe 2 days ago or something like that was his first official practice with the team. Now you're telling him go guard Jason Tatum? Like, that's tough. But
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time he's guarded Jason Tatum, so he
does
have some experience with that. He's a little bit younger, so it's not like his body is going to completely fall apart after not playing, or at least we hope it doesn't.
No, I'm just thinking more about timing. I mean, Jason Tatum is
he's rolling.
He's rolling right now, and he's been playing all year long. Now he's had playoff run in him. His gear, he's in a higher gear already than Ben Simmons before he even steps on the floor.
Yeah, I also expect to see Ben Simmons, doing his thing in the open court, running with the ball, maybe finishing in transition. Maybe this will allow Kyrie Irving to become more of a spot-up shooter, KD to be more of a spot-up shooter. Maybe they can space the floor a little bit for guys like Drummond. It'll be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, I think this really helps Seth Curry and Bruce Brown more than anybody else, right? I mean, KD and Kyrie, sure, maybe they might get a couple more easy looks, but Ben Simmons is not a shooter, so those are the guys that they're going to be focused on anyway. But the others, the people like Seth Curry, Goran Dragic, those guys, they might get more open looks now at the basket with a Ben Simmons on the floor, which could be really beneficial for Brooklyn.
Yeah, but whether he comes back in Game 4 or not, Game 3 is where they need to focus, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But before we get there, other big news today, Chet Holmgren, the projected number 1 overall pick, is declaring for the NBA draft. What does this mean for Chet, and what does this mean for the NBA, Cal?
Well, what does it mean for Chet? He's about to make a lot of money. What does it mean for the NBA? You're getting another unicorn in the NBA, a guy who is over 7 feet tall, handles the ball like a guard, shoots the ball like a guard, has great timing with his rim protection and blocking shots inside. The biggest knock against him, obviously, is his size. Is he ready to handle NBA players, grown men, on a daily basis? He's going to have to put on weight, all that stuff. But we've heard that before, Kevin Durant, all these guys. Chet Holmgren is an incredibly skilled and talented big man, and his skill set fits into the NBA game pretty seamlessly right now.
I know we still have the NBA draft lottery on May 17th, but right now the Rockets are projected with the number 1 pick. Do they take Chet number 1?
That's tough. I think it's all going to come down to the draft combine. There's a couple of big guys, Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren, both, depending on who you ask, are the projected number 1 overall picks. Their games are similar in a lot of ways. They're both big men who can handle the ball, shoot really well from outside, and have great high defensive ceiling potential. So whoever ends up with this number 1 pick, they're going to do their due diligence. And honestly, I think it could go either way at this point between those two guys.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely talk about this young Rockets team and all the guards and the talent they have. They also have Christian Wood. We don't know what's going to happen with him, but I think they need to bring in a big man, right? So Chet Holmgren would fit that perfectly.
Don't forget they did draft, I might butcher his name, but Alfred Sagan last year in the first round, and he was looking really, really good early on in the season for them. Had some injury problems later and missed a bunch of games down the stretch of the season. But the Rockets have questions to answer on the front court for their big men. So are they going to commit to Sagan, who they took last year, or do they try for another big man here in this draft?
Yep. All right, moving on here. The first game to recap from Wednesday, the Brooklyn Nets lose to the Boston Celtics. They were up pretty much the whole game. Like I said, they fell apart in the fourth quarter. They end up losing 114-107. Boston has a 40-1 record when they're up 2-0, Calvin. What are your thoughts on this game?
Brooklyn is in trouble. As much as I didn't want to say that, I picked the Nets to win this series. Both of these games have been back and forth, lots of lead changes. This was Brooklyn's game to win, and they let it slip away from them. I mean, to think that they were up 17 points in the first half, really controlled this game all the way through that first half. They shot over 60% from the field. KD and Kyrie have down games, but you get 23 points from Bruce Brown. You get 16 points from Seth Curry and 18 points off the bench from Goran Dragic. That is a game on the road. They shot 47% from three. Mm-hmm. They should win that game 10 out of 10 times. It was too much Boston defense and the dynamic duo of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum down the stretch, though. That was, like Jason Tatum said during the post-game press conference, a total team effort to claw their way back into it. And, Brooklyn is in serious trouble now going back home.
Yeah, I think so, too. And it's amazing to think that they shot that well from three-point range, and only 5 guys on this team actually made a three-pointer, 2 of them off the bench, 4 for Seth Curry, 3 for Bruce Brown. KD only had 1. Kyrie Irving didn't score from the three-point line. He only had 10 points in this game. The news of the game before, or the big deal, was Kyrie getting into it with the fans, flipping them off. For me, he looked like he was out of his groove in this game. He didn't seem comfortable. He didn't seem his normal self. Do you think that's maybe because of the Boston crowd, or there's something else going on with him?
No, it's because of the Boston players. It's the defense that they are playing right now against. This is the first time in my life watching Kevin Durant play basketball that he's looked like somebody I can play against.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the defense that they're playing on him is absolutely incredible. I mean, he goes 0 for 10 from the field in the second half. It's a really, really great credit and testament to what Boston has turned themselves into this year. They're the best defensive team in the NBA. They now have the best defensive player officially in the NBA on their team, and they're really, really making these guys work for everything that they get. Kevin Durant, he scores with such ease because he's able to shoot over people, even if there's someone right in his face, right? He still gets a clean look at the basket. Jason Tatum's one of the only guys in the league that's long enough, quick enough, and agile enough to stay in front of him And then when you get, like we talked about in game one, Al Horford making defensive plays on Kevin Durant, that's just playing with house money if you're Boston. So do I expect Kyrie and Kevin Durant to come back and look more like themselves in game 3? Yes, I do. But I will say this is probably the best defense I've ever seen played against these two guys. Kyrie Irving's got the best handles maybe of all time, right? Mm-hmm. And they're poking the ball out of his hands left and right. Same with Kevin Durant. Lots of turnovers between these two. Durant had 6 himself last night. That's just incredible to me.
Yeah, it really is. And another shout out to Al Horford. I've never seen somebody body up KD like Al Horford did in that first game, which is really incredible because I thought that Al Horford was over the hill maybe 2 seasons ago, and he's really, really played well. It'll be interesting to see what happens in game 3. I think it's definitely a must-win for the Nets. But Calvin, my question for you, is the KD-Kyrie pairing doomed in Brooklyn?
I'm not going to say they're doomed yet. I mean, again, it's just like, or it's very similar to the situation that the Lakers had this year. Are the Lakers a disappointing team? Hell yeah, they are. But I think they would have been in a different place if all 3 of those guys were healthy for the entire season. You can say the exact same thing about the Nets, who are missing even more than the Lakers have missed this year. When you think about it, they traded James Harden for a guy that hasn't played a game yet, who's another all-star. Joe Harris has missed most of the season. He is an incredibly important part of this team. Kyrie Irving, we already have talked, ad nauseum about what he's done for his own personal choices this season. Only 27 games played in the regular season. I think if this team comes back next year completely healthy, it's a much different story. They're not going to be in the play-in tournament. They won't be the 7th seed in the East. This is still one of the most formidable teams in the NBA.
Yeah, and I'm still not giving up on Brooklyn this early. I know they lost 2 games. They were in both of these games. I thought they should have won game 1. They're heading back home now, and then potentially they will be getting an all-star and Ben Simmons back in game 4. I'm not writing them off yet. I still have them advancing, but I'm a little worried now, and it really comes down to game 3.
You think they still win this series?
It's possible.
It's possible, but I'm saying it. You think they still win this series?
I need to see what happens in game 3.
Okay.
But as of right now, I still have them advancing.
I'm ready to jump off the ship. I think this series is over.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to be a sweep, but I think this series is over.
Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on here. The second game yesterday, the Sixers go to Toronto. Toronto's up big early in this game. The Sixers fight back. We see a ton of missed free throws there at the end of the game. Some by James Harden and some by OG Anunoby. This game goes to overtime, and we see Joel Embiid hit an incredible 3 to win the game for Philadelphia.
Yeah, and shout out to Doc Rivers. What a play call that was. They talked about it a little bit in the post-game press conference, but they got Joel the shot he wanted. He says that's one of his favorite places on the court. Yep. Just missed one, a little bit earlier than that. But they couldn't have gotten him a better look there, and he made him pay for it. This game, much like if you're a Nets fan, if you're a Raptors fan, you kind of are feeling very similar after this game. This was the game that you had to win, and you had it in your grasp. But they got out to a big lead early. They were the aggressor, just like Brooklyn was, and they got the contributions they needed outside of their star players to win a playoff game like this. OG Anunoby has maybe the best game he's going to have in this series, 26 points. 24 for Gary Trent Jr., who's a guy that we mentioned ahead of this game being someone they really needed for his floor spacing. He goes 4 of 9 from 3. And then Precious Achiuwa, 20 points off the bench, 9 of 11 shooting. But the problem, just like Brooklyn had, was the guys you would expect or you don't even think are going to play poorly, Van Vliet and Siakam, don't pull their weight. 24 points combined between the two of them, and Van Vliet really struggling to shoot right now. 3 of 13 from the floor. And
only 20% from the three-point line.
Exactly. When you're down 0-2 and you have a team on the ropes like this, you allow them to come back and win a game like that in overtime, that's it, man. Turn the lights off. It's over.
Yeah, this is officially over. I should have picked this game as my sweep in the first round. No Matisse Thybulle, no problem for the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid continues to dominate. When I was watching this game, I'm like, Joel Embiid is really dominating inside, and that's exactly what I thought would happen in this series. But then as I continue watching, I'm like, he's dominating inside, he's dominating outside, he's dominating everywhere. Joel Embiid is just absolutely dominating this series. And Calvin, he's my pick for MVP now.
Yeah, I like that. I don't think that postseason performances should be weighted into your MVP decision, but I mean, he was my pick for MVP for probably 75% of the year. If he wins, I'll be very, very happy for him, and it's much deserved. Very,
very much deserved. Well, speaking of a former MVP, James Harden struggles a little bit in this game. 19 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, 7 of 13 from the field. Misses a couple free throws late in this game. Calvin, he just seems like a different guy out there. He doesn't seem like the same James Harden that we saw in Houston. So I want to know from you, what is going on with James Harden? Is this temporary, or is this the new James Harden?
It's hard to say with him. You know, I think the one thing about James Harden on this team is that he doesn't have to be the MVP James Harden from Houston on this team. He doesn't have to score 35 points a game for them to win anymore. Whereas in Houston, I think he absolutely had to carry the big shoulder or the most of the scoring weight on himself. But if he's coming in with 19 points and 10 assists a game, you know, the shooting numbers are not bad either. 7 of 13, 2 of 4 from 3. As long as Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris are continuing to put up points the way that they have been, I'm not too concerned about the way James Harden is playing right now. He didn't have as many turnovers in this game, 3, as opposed to what we've seen, you know, high turnover numbers from him lately. So people are obviously going to be criticizing him big time here because he was the one player coming into this postseason that I think a lot of people were saying has the most to prove, and it's championship or bust in Philadelphia, all that stuff. But the way that they're playing right now to me is okay. They're scoring a ton of points. Defensively, they've been really good. I think this is Embiid's team all the way. He's got to be the guy. So from Philadelphia's standpoint, I'm not too worried right now about James Harden.
I think the biggest thing this season that everyone was talking about was the rule change, right? Like, people were taking advantage of calls, getting to the free throw line. James Harden, for me, was the biggest guy that basically, you know, thrived off of those rules, right? Where you can't touch the defender. There was times where I really hated watching him because I'd feel like he'd just run up to the free throw line and just go throw his arms up, get the call. We don't see that this season. He actually fouled out in this game with 6 fouls. You know, they're calling things a little bit differently. Do you think that could be what's affecting him?
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. I mean, keep in mind that the dude's played for how many different teams in the past 4 seasons? So, I mean, there's also just the continuity and getting used to playing with your new teammates. He still really hasn't been in Philadelphia for that long. So there's probably some of that as well. And I will say, you know, if Philadelphia continues to move on, every round they advance to in this playoffs, they're going to need more out of James Harden, right? Like, Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris have been great, but you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, you get to the NBA Finals, you know, that's a stage where your best players need to play their best. So the numbers he's putting up right now maybe won't work if you're playing in the Eastern Conference Finals against Milwaukee or something like that. But I still think there's time for him to figure it out, and we're probably going to see one of those vintage James Harden games in these playoffs sooner than later. I would bet on it.
Yeah, he just needs to find exactly what his responsibilities are on this team. You know, we've seen guys like Tyrese Maxey go crazy. He played almost 48 minutes in this game, 19 points for him, but we saw a couple huge outbursts from him in the last couple games. So I think James Harden is still trying to just kind of fit in on this team. It's funny, 19 and 10 with 3 turnovers is a good game for anybody not named James Harden or LeBron James or one of these guys. But because he makes so much money, because he has MVP awards, because he's done all these other things, we just expect a little bit more out of him. And I think the Sixers are expecting more out of him as well.
Yeah, definitely. But like you said, it's all about finding that balance right now. I mean, 13 shot attempts for James Harden is pretty low. Like we're used to seeing him put up a ton of shots.
13
Yeah, and on this team, he doesn't really necessarily have to do that all the time. So it's trying to figure out where all the pieces fit and fall into place.
Yep. So Philadelphia goes up 3-0. Calvin, is the series over? Is it ending in game 4?
This will be a sweep. This was Toronto's game to get, and they didn't get it. It's over now. Scotty
Barnes is still sidelined, unavailable for the team. They are really missing him big. But I don't think anybody expected the Raptors to win this series anyways. I think Shaq predicted a sweep. I should have predicted a sweep as well. All right, moving on here. Our third and final game yesterday, Calvin's favorite game to watch. A very surprising game. As we mentioned, earlier in the show, we saw Chris Middleton go down in this game. We saw Bobby Portis go down in this game. And then we see the Milwaukee Bucks go down in this game. Chicago wins 114-110 in a thriller at the wire. Calvin, thoughts on the game? And what did you do afterwards to celebrate?
You know I'm excited. I didn't do anything to celebrate because I actually had to watch this game when I got home from work, which for me was about 11:30 p.m. So I finished watching this game at like just after 1 a.m. I didn't really do anything after that. There was no celebration.
I'm sure you couldn't sleep watching this game.
There will be, definitely not. There will be a celebration for sure, no matter what time of day it is. If the Bulls pull the major upset and win this series, I guarantee you that. But as far as the game goes, the Bulls played about as well as they possibly could have. I hope that's not the case because they're going to need more games like this in order to win the series. Mm-hmm. But we talked about it after game 1. It was the worst shooting performance that the Chicago Bulls had all season long. Their big 3 was virtually non-existent. That wasn't going to happen again. DeRozan comes in with 41. Vucevic and LaVine both go over 20 points. They shot much, much better from 3. 4 of 8 for Vuce, 3 of 4 for LaVine. But this game was won for Chicago on defense. And I'm specifically talking about the other guys, again, not the big 3. Alex Caruso and Patrick Williams were huge for the Bulls in this game. They didn't score a lot, but they gave them a little bit of offense. Caruso was big time running the point, though. 10 assists. He got guys wide open looks at the three-point line. And his versatility on defense is just amazing. He guarded everyone in this game, from Giannis to Chris Middleton to Drew Holiday. He was great on all of them. And big shout out to Patrick Williams as well, who drew the assignment of Giannis for most of the night. Giannis still had a great game, but they made it really difficult for him. He missed a bunch of layups inside. That's how Chicago won this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What's up, Mike? Good to see you here in the chat. And also, real quick, I want to remind everybody that's watching right now, we are giving away a $250 Fanatics gift card. If you want to be eligible for that, all you need to do is go to our channel, click on the video that says basketball giveaway, $250 Fanatics gift card. You got to watch that video. It's a very short one, and it'll give you instructions on how to enter yourself in that contest. Yeah, Calvin, it was a huge win for the Chicago Bulls. 41 points for DeMar DeRozan. He just played incredible. They gave him a new nickname, Ice Cold or Frozen DeRozan. Which is funny because when you say somebody is ice cold, that's usually a bad thing.
It's usually a bad thing.
But Frozen DeRozan,
unless
I'm
they've
going
got
with
ice in their veins, then it's a good thing.
We saw the usual DeRozan game, 6 of 31 from the field. Did not make a three in this game, 9 of 9 from the free throw line. He was just aggressive. He kept attacking the basket, and every time the Bulls needed a bucket, they got it from DeRozan. 20 points also for Zach LaVine, and as you mentioned, Vucevic, 24 points and 13 rebounds in this game. Calvin, where do you rank Vucevic in the NBA as far as centers? I'm a little mixed on him. I was not the biggest fan in Orlando. I knew there was some things he could do, but I just didn't see it, creating team success. He ends up getting traded to the Bulls. They rebuild the entire team in one offseason. So I just want to hear where you rank Vucevic, if he was the catalyst to bring this Chicago Bulls team to the playoffs, and just overall thoughts.
Well, my overall thoughts, Vucevic is a really, really skilled offensive player. He struggles on defense, and his ability to cover space and cover ground, it's been one of the big things in this series. It's why Brook Lopez got off to a huge game. It's why they try to switch him onto Giannis throughout the course of the game. That being said, though, his ability on offense, vice versa, to space the floor. He's a great outside shooter. He's a good and willing passer, has some really nice post-up moves inside. He is a huge, huge addition to this team. Was he the catalyst for what happened last offseason with the signing of DeRozan and Ball and Caruso? I'm sure it helped. I still would, even if the Bulls didn't pull off the trade for Vooch, I still would have expected their GM to go out and be really aggressive in free agency. He was the former GM of the Denver Nuggets, really, really solid team builder. That's kind of his MO in the league right now. So I think the Bulls still would have made a splash in free agency last offseason, but maybe it wouldn't have been as big because they already had LaVine and Vucevic to kind of build around.
Yeah, a lot of people are circling the Chicago Bulls as a blueprint that the Sacramento Kings should be looking at with their trade deadline deal and bringing in a big in Domantas Sabonis and pairing him with De'Aaron Fox. Do you see any similarities between a LaVine and Vucevic pairing and a Fox-Sabonis pairing?
I see some similarities, but I think the most similarities are just kind of the way that both teams should go about constructing their team, right? The Bulls went out, they added star power, and they added 3-and-D wings.
Yep.
Caruso, Lonzo Ball, DeRozan, all those guys, right? That's what the Kings need, absolutely. They got these two stars to build around now. They need to add more star power, more star talent on this team, and they also need shooting and defense. So, I mean, you can probably say that is a blueprint for, more than half the teams in the league, though.
Yeah, I'm just overall happy to see the Chicago Bulls get a win in this series. This was the only series that I predicted as a sweep in the first round. That's nothing against Chicago. I think they're a bright team with, a big ceiling. I just felt like it was maybe a year too early, and it just shows how much I value the Milwaukee Bucks. I thought that they would be able to finish this in 4. Now it could be 5, 6, or even 7 games. Last thoughts on Bulls-Bucks before we move on here to Thursday's preview.
Well, I think Milwaukee needs to be nervous here. I mean, we already talked about Chris Middleton going down. That's a big, big blow to them. The Bulls nearly stole game 1, shooting 18% from 3. This could be a real series. I think Milwaukee is my pick to repeat as champs, right? I think they're the best team. But the Bulls, if they're able to get games like this out of DeRozan and LaVine, the way that they're attacking too right now, LaVine is really focused on getting to the basket, getting up layups and trying to create fouls on the big men, Giannis and Brook Lopez and all these guys. So if the Bulls keep playing defense like this, and rebounding is going to be the biggest key for this series, that final possession there when DeRozan gets the bucket to seal it, they got 3 offensive rebounds on that possession.
Yeah.
That cannot happen if you're Milwaukee. So I think we're in for a long ride here for this series.
Yeah, it's really amazing the chemistry that this Bulls team has created in just over or less than a year, basically, at this point. Half of those guys came in the offseason. So it's really incredible, and I wish them the best. I'm always in for exciting series and more basketball. So hopefully the Bulls can pull out a couple more of these games. They definitely have the firepower to get a win or two here. It's just going to be interesting to see whether they can get 4. Right?
Definitely.
First to 4 is where it matters. All right, moving on here to today's games. I hope you all are excited. We have a full slate of games today, 3 games. First off, we have the Memphis Grizzly Wolves. That's right.
Yes.
The Memphis Grizzlies face the Minnesota Timberwolves in Minnesota. The series is tied 1-1. This is game 3. Calvin, over under on protesters.
The over-under is still 1.5.
Okay.
Because we've only had one protester so far at each game.
So we saw Minnesota lose their first game of the series in the last meeting between the two. And coincidentally, there was not a protester during that game, or at least not one that made it onto the court. Are they a little worried? Do they need some protesters here to get a win?
I don't think they need any protesters. They're back home. They have the crowd behind them. So, yeah, they don't need any protesters. But they do need to play a lot better than they played in game 2. And Memphis is going to be coming, ready to roll. They're going to play. This series is just going to be so fast-paced. It's a lot of fun to watch. And the thing about it is, both of these teams you don't really trust 100% in a 7-game series yet. So every game could be a blowout. Like, you're not really sure which team is going to show up on any given night.
Yeah, no injuries to report in this game today. And ESPN basically has this as a toss-up. Memphis is favored. It's 50.3% to 49.7%. That's basically a toss-up to me. And I think Memphis is favored by 1.5. What do the Minnesota Timberwolves need to do to win this game, Cal?
They need to get big games out of their big 3. I think a lot of these other series, we've got star players that are already really, really established, most of them really established in postseason play. So for them, you're looking at who else are they going to get contributions from, right? Minnesota's the opposite. Their big 3 have been very up and down since the play-in playoffs have started. They need Karl Anthony Towns to be the best player in the gym today.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. All right, next up today we have the Dallas Mavericks. They're finally heading to Utah. The series is tied 1-1 after Dallas squeaks out a victory there without Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is still listed as out. Frank Ntilikina is listed as out. Utah is basically favored by almost 9 in this game. What are your thoughts on this, Cal?
This is another, kind of a toss-up game, right? Both these games have been pretty close so far, and I think Utah's definitely going to benefit, just like Minnesota will, from going home, getting the crowd behind them. It's a tightly contested series. I give the edge slightly to Utah in this game just because they're at home, and both games have been pretty close so far, and if Luka doesn't play, that's obviously going to hurt again, but Utah better not mess around, because if they lose this game, Mike's Mavs are moving on, whether or not Luka plays.
Yeah, they definitely need to get a win here. I think they got to figure out a way to shut down Jalen Brunson, which is crazy to say that the goal is to shut down basically the backup point guard. But their perimeter defense...
He's no average backup point guard.
I know, but I'm just saying, they've struggled at perimeter defense. We all know about Rudy Gobert and how well of a rim protector he is. But when they're making threes, there's nothing Rudy can really do. So they need to focus in on Jalen Brunson and some of these other guys. And they need to make it tough on Dallas.
They do. They need to make it tough. They need to get out and run. They've got to try to manufacture more possessions, more shot attempts in this game. Dallas loves to play at a slow pace and grind it out. And Utah's got to get up threes, which transition opportunities are some of the best. That and offensive rebounds, two of the best times to take a three-point shot, right? So they need to let it fly. They need to score a bunch of points. And Mike Conley needs to have a big game. He's been really disappointing for this team so far. He's the third head of the three-headed monster for them. If he doesn't get it going, Utah basically no shot.
You think Utah will blow it up this season if they lose this series?
I am predicting that they blow it up. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you were just to make a prediction here, I know you got your picks here, but who's winning the series, Cal?
My original pick, sorry, Mike, was Utah. I'm going to change that now, though. I just don't believe in this team. I don't trust this team. They can't get enough big-time contributions out of their big-time players. Donovan Mitchell is trying to carry this team as much as he can by himself, but you just can't do that in the playoffs anymore, especially against a scrappy defensive team like Dallas.
Yep.
So I think that it is over as we know it in Utah. Quinn Snyder's probably out. They have big decisions to be made about their core group of players, who stays, who goes. Mm-hmm. I think they definitely would rather keep Donovan Mitchell than Rudy Gobert, but is that doable if they lose this first-round series? I don't know.
Yeah, they need to figure it out. And like you mentioned, Mike Conley needs to do something in this series. He really does. He can't be outplayed by Jalen Brunson. I'm going to hold off on picking the Mavs here. And that's just because I think that Game 3 on all these series, Game 3 is the biggest game of the series. It's the most important for me. I need to see what happens here in Game 3. But I'm on the same page as you. If Dallas wins this game, they're going to win the series. I just think that's what's going to happen because they've been playing incredible. And it's just crazy how well they've been playing without Luka Doncic. I don't think Utah will even have a chance if Luka Doncic is back.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly have to wait to see what he looks like. But my question for you is, when Luka comes back, are you starting Jalen Brunson next to him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree.
Definitely. I might try and stagger their minutes a little bit. Just because they start doesn't mean they're both going to come out at the same time. I'll try and stagger the minutes so I have one of those guys in there at the same time. But Jalen Brunson is definitely a starter to me. And the Mavericks need to figure out how they can lock this guy up in free agency because you cannot lose this guy.
Yeah,
you cannot. All right. On our third and final game today, we have the Golden State Warriors traveling to Denver to try and take a 3-0 series lead. The Nuggets are favored in this game. They have a 65% chance of winning this game, and they are favored by 2.5. But the Warriors have looked really incredible. They seem to finally be healthy. Jordan Poole is playing out of his mind, and we might have the new Golden State Death lineup. Calvin, thoughts on tonight's game?
If you're a betting man, this is the easiest bet. This is a lock bet for me. Golden State plus 2.5.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice, but if you want to put some money down, you put money down on the Golden State Warriors to win tonight. I think this series is over. The Nuggets looked like their spirits and their backs were completely broken in Game 2. They're starting fights with each other on the bench. And the Warriors are just humming. They're absolutely firing on all cylinders right now. Steph is going to play more minutes in this game. I think he worked himself back into Steph Curry form in Game 2. It is good. This is Mount Everest right now if you're the Denver Nuggets trying to climb it.
So weird, right? Like you bring in DeMarcus Cousins to a team and then all of a sudden their chemistry is ruined and they're fighting each other on the bench. That's weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right.
You can't make this stuff up,
definitely,
Cal.
you can't make this stuff up. But on the other side of the coin, you have to feel for Denver, right? Like, of course they're going to be so frustrated. They've tried everything they could to work their way into playoff position, not fully healthy this season. They've got to be incredibly frustrated knowing that this isn't really their full team, and now they're being made to look, silly out there almost by Golden State. So It could go one of two ways. Again, they're at home. They're going to have the crowd behind them. Do they use that and all the frustration as motivation to come out and play a really solid game? Maybe they steal one here, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's too much to overcome. If Jordan Poole continues to play the way that he does, Steph can have an average game and Golden State can still win by 15 points. So,
yeah, I think all three of their big three could have an average game and they could still pull this out. They just are so well balanced and they have so many good young and older talented players on that Golden State roster. I'm a little bummed for the Nuggets here, and that's just based on the fact that this team had such high hopes. They've dealt with so many different injuries. They've tried to add to their team. They brought in a guy like Aaron Gordon. They've really tried their hardest. But Calvin, we see a guy that they let go just a couple years ago in Jeremy Grant having a career year in Detroit. Many teams wanted to pick him up at the deadline, but a trade did not happen. Was that a big mistake to let him go if you're Denver?
It's easy to say now that it was a big mistake, but I'm not going to make that statement just because you've still got Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. on this team who are both hurt. So this team at full strength, I think most people expect them to be a serious contender in the Western Conference, probably one of the best 3 or 4 teams out there.
Yep.
I mean, Memphis made this huge leap now, right? Obviously, but if Denver was healthy, fully healthy for the full season, I don't know that Memphis is sitting there at the number 2 seed.
Yeah, if I'm Denver, I have a lot of assets, and if I see anything...
And these guys are young, too, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's still a long time for them to make a push here.
Yeah, and if I see any funny business going on with Utah in the offseason, I'm calling to try and get a guy like Donovan Mitchell. If you could keep Jamal Murray and Jokic and bring in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, this team would
be a scary team.
Incredible. All right, Calvin, final thoughts on Nuggets Warriors.
It's been a fun ride. Nikola Jokic had one of the best seasons of anybody in NBA history. It's coming to an end pretty soon, though.
And what game are you looking forward most to today?
It's got to be Memphis-Soda.
Okay.
I mean, it's high octane, 2 highest scoring teams in the NBA. This is going to be a wildly entertaining playoff series. I hope the game's a little bit closer this time. Both Game 1 and Game 2, well, Game 2 was a blowout pretty much the whole way through, but Game 1, it was close, and then Minnesota pulled away at the end. I'm hoping for a really good finish tonight. I think we'll get probably 2 or 3 of those games in this series, and I think this is another series that's going to go a long way, 6 or 7 games.
And did you pick the Timberwolves to win this game?
I haven't picked anybody yet. I'm actually going to pick Memphis to win this game on the road and take control of the series.
So you're taking all 3 road teams today.
Yep.
Memphis, Dallas, and Golden State. All 3 of these games will be very exciting. I wish we were in Vegas because that'd be a pretty good parlay. But all right, guys, we are getting to Calvin's favorite part of the show here, Q&A. We're opening it up, so if you guys have any questions, any topics, anything that you would like us to discuss for the last few minutes here, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we would love to hear from you. And while you're coming up with your questions and all that stuff, Calvin, it's what's been your favorite series so far you've seen?
Man, that's tough. A lot of these series have been really, really fun to watch so far, and a lot of them are actually closer than I thought it was going to be. You know, I mean, we thought Phoenix was going to sweep. I didn't expect the Philadelphia-Toronto series to be as one-sided as it has been. I think it's still probably both 2-7 matchups for me, just because you don't really expect a 2-7 matchup to be one of the best in the first round of the playoffs. But both of these series could end up being the best ones out of any first-round series. And that Eastern Conference 2-7 matchup is not really a real 2-7, right? Like, it could easily be an Eastern Conference Finals matchup. So it's probably Brooklyn and Boston for me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also looking a little bit more towards this Phoenix series. It's a 1-8 matchup. Like, we saw the Pelicans should not have made the playoffs this year, but because there is the play-in tournament, they were able to win 2 games. They made some huge trades at the deadline. They seem like a completely different team, and they're making some moves here without Zion Williamson. that series, because of the Devin Booker injury, got a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely.
It really did.
And then, of course, I can go with my homer pick and say the Bulls-Bucks series is my favorite to watch. It might be now.
Injuries just made that more exciting as well. Who is going to get injured yet? Next, we don't know. All right, first question, Flame Flurry 11. If the Kings don't make the playoffs, do you think Fox requests a trade?
I don't know how you make a guess as to what the answer would be here. It's asking too much information that I don't know, and most of it resides in De'Aaron Fox's head. So,
yeah, and also I want to just give you guys a quick update. We are going to be going live here on Royal Rebounds in about 30 minutes, so we're going to be covering some Kings stuff there. So hopefully you can all join us. That's a tough one. If the Kings don't make the playoffs, do you think Fox requests a trade? I think that
the chances are higher of him requesting a trade, but how high are the chances? That you just don't know.
I'm going to say yes. I think he requests a trade if they don't make the playoffs next season. And I think they will make the playoffs, but I think it's all going to come down to what happens this offseason and then the health of next season too, right? Like we've talked about what the Bulls did and how they turned it around. The Kings could do something very, very similar. We've also heard a ton of frustration from De'Aaron Fox and the fact that he's wanted to win with this team. He hates losing. We just heard from Boogie Cousins about this team sucked before I got here. They sucked when I was here. They sucked when I left. It's got to be frustrating to be a player that's constantly losing. But, yeah, I would say he does request a trade if the Kings do not make the playoffs next season.
It's certainly not a situation that the Sacramento Kings want to find out what the answer is, right?
Yeah. And honestly, if he requests a trade, it could not be the worst thing in the world for Sacramento either.
It always depends on who you get.
All right, Jug 29. Do you guys think nowadays with the high pace of teams, a 10-man rotation is better than the classic 8-man when pace was much slower?
Well, I'm assuming you're talking about playoff basketball specifically, and I think that teams are already moving away from that. I mean, it depends on injuries and personnel and all that stuff, but you look at Minnesota and Memphis, they're the two highest scoring teams in the league. They've played 13 games or 13 guys in a playoff game, both teams so far. So, yeah, I definitely think teams are starting to move into that, trying to keep fresh legs and almost like a line change in hockey, you know?
Yeah, and this season especially has been difficult with all the COVID-related stuff too. Like we've seen games where 5, 6 plus people have been sidelined from a roster. So teams were basically rushing at the deadline here to stack up their teams, add the extra talent. Once players got out, they tried to add extra talent so that they would be prepared for situations like the Clippers were just in a week ago where Paul George was not able to play due to COVID. It's really hard to say at this point, but I'm going to agree with Calvin. I think yes, especially these older teams, they need younger guys that are willing to get in there and run.
Yeah, definitely.
He says basically because of fatigue. Yeah, I mean, we've seen the pace of the NBA pick up. We've seen rule changes to help benefit, just like in football, to benefit the quarterback or benefit the point guard or whoever has the ball because scoring sells, right? Defense doesn't sell. People want to see Tom Brady throwing 5 touchdowns and 400 yards, not a 3-7 game. And same in the NBA, is they want to see, high-scoring games with lots of shooting and big dunks and all that. They don't want to see, 80, 89 to 87 slow, grinded-out basketball. It just doesn't sell.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
All right, any more questions here, guys? Before we wrap up the show, we appreciate you all. And just a reminder, we will be back tomorrow, April 22nd, same time, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to be doing this through the entire playoffs, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. All right, another question from Flame Fury 11. What do you think the best trade would be for Holmes this offseason? Just your opinion.
That's a tough question because I would have to really kind of do some research and look into it. Coming up with one off the top of my head might not be my ultimate best trade. But I think any trade, like I said before, that yields them shooters or two-way players, 3-and-D guys, unless it's a trade that, say they get like the number 2 or number 3 overall pick, packaging that pick with Holmes for a guy like a Pascal Siakam, a Donovan Mitchell. I'm not saying that either one of those trades are necessarily possible at this point, but that would be the best type of trade, I think, right, that you could possibly hope for if you're Sacramento.
Yeah, if I'm Sacramento and I'm going to move on from Richaun Holmes, which we actually don't even know if they plan on doing that at this point, because every press conference that Monty McNair has had, he's praised Richaun. He said he's excited to get him back next season. We don't know if this is smoke and mirrors. Obviously, he didn't want to trade Tyrese Halliburton, but he ended up doing it to improve the team, which I think is, a correct way to look at it. If I were to find a team that I wanted to trade with, it's probably going to be the Charlotte Hornets. I'm going to be looking at a guy like Miles Bridges, who needs to be paid this offseason. Maybe we can work out a sign and trade for him for Richaun Holmes. I also like P.J. Washington. And then I like some of the young guys in James Bouknight and Kai Jones. I don't know if either of those guys are actually attainable, but if I'm looking to move Richaun Holmes, I'm looking to a team like Charlotte that has a bunch of different options that work for me of, wing players that can shoot and play defense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So if that's the case, do you think the Kings have a solid 5 off the bench with Mitchell off the bench as the backup point guard, or do they need to get that resolved with another starter?
I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. Do they need either a new starting shooting guard or new power forward? Yeah, I think they do. They've got to add more big-time talent to this team, which will allow them to put Davion onto the bench and have a very legit second unit.
Yeah, the Kings have so many questions to answer this offseason, and that 2-guard spot is absolutely a dire need for them. Is it going to be Dante DiVincenzo? Is it going to be Davion Mitchell? Are these guys starters? Are they going to come off the bench? Are they going to be packaging a trade to bring in another big-name guy? If I'm Monty McNair, I have to be in constant communication with De'Aaron Fox, just based on what you guys asked earlier on whether he would ask for a trade. If I'm concerned that maybe he's not all in and maybe he would request a trade next season, then I'm going to hold on to a guy like Davion Mitchell, because I feel like he could fit right in there and fill that spot. Now, if Fox is committed to this team and I need to upgrade at the 2, maybe the 4, I might be looking to trade guys like Dante DiVincenzo or potentially Davion Mitchell to see what I can bring back. If I can get a 3rd star, this team needs more. It's just going to be a matter of how they're able to juggle everything to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. But I think you certainly have to be optimistic if your DiVincenzo's not going to like this scenario, but if your core group of players off the bench is Richaun Holmes, DiVincenzo, and Davion Mitchell, that's a really, really good start for a second unit, I think.
There's a rumor.
And we didn't even mention Damian Jones. If they're able to re-sign him too, like they got some stuff going for them there.
Much needed. There's rumors the Kings are after Duncan Robinson. If they can get him, do they start him or Dante?
Ooh, that's tough.
If I'm Sacramento, I'm staying the hell away from Duncan Robinson because they already can't play defense. And I would rather bring in a guy that can play defense. The Kings do not have the luxury that Miami has to be able to hide a guy like that.
That's true. I will say that Duncan Robinson is a very poor one-on-one on-ball defender. But in that system in Miami, and again, I know the Kings don't have the same team defense or system that the Miami Heat do, but they taught him how to play team defense. He knows where to be. He talks really well. He communicates. He usually is able to get in the right position for a chance to take a charge. Doesn't always happen, but he is a high IQ player, I think, defensively. He's just limited physically in what he can do. That being said, we're talking about one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. So he makes a lot of money. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
He
almost
signed a
$17
$90 million contract just a couple of years ago, or was it last season? Either way. So he makes a ton of money, but I think they could do a lot worse than getting somebody like Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, that's possible.
And he started a lot of games in Miami also, so.
Yeah, I know things are a little different for him, but I'm just looking at all this. You know, next season he's going to be 28 years old, making $17 million. Then he goes on 18, 19, almost $20 million a season.
It's a lot of money. It's definitely a lot
You
of
mentioned, you know, one of the best three-point shooters in the league, doesn't play a lot of on-ball defense. It just makes me feel like we might be stumbling into another Buddy Hield situation. So
yeah, I think the Kings, if they were closer to being, you know, a team that was ready to contend, then this would be a great addition, right?
Yeah.
It would be a really, really solid move. But they need to add so many other pieces before they get a guy like this.
Yep, I agree. All right, guys, we are closing the bar here. If you guys have any more awesome Kings questions, like I said, we're going to be live on Royal Rebounds. Make sure you guys check out the YouTube channel, Royal Rebounds, in about 15 minutes, doing a Kings update, and we will be there to answer any of your Kings questions. Thank you all so much for joining us. Calvin, any last words here?
Happy basketball, everybody. Playoff time.
All right, bars close. As always, please don't drink and drive, and don't forget to tip your bartender.